The family curse. Growing up, my grandmother's tales of our family curse always seemed like nothing more than fanciful stories meant to scare us into behaving. But as I've grown older, I've come to realize that there may be more truth to her words than I ever dared to believe. The curse, she said, was placed upon our family by a vengeful gypsy many generations ago, and its effects have plagued us ever since. According to her, 1 out of every 5 new people we meet in our everyday lives will bear a sinister visage, their features contorted into a wicked, twisted grin that sends shivers down our spines. At first, I dismissed her warnings as nothing more than superstition. But then I began to notice the pattern, the way certain individuals would look at me with eyes filled with malice, their lips curled into a malevolent smile that seemed to mock me from across the room. I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head, that I was simply imagining things. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more apparent it became. The curse was real, and it was coming for me. And then there's my sister. My beloved sister, who passed away under mysterious circumstances many years ago. I've always suspected that her death was somehow connected to the curse, but I've never been able to prove it. As the winter days grew colder and darker, the curse seemed to tighten its grip on my life, leaving me feeling more isolated and alone than ever before. Everywhere I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes were following my every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The faces of those around me took on a sinister quality, their smiles twisted into grotesque grins that sent chills down my spine. It seemed as though the curse was everywhere, lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce on its unsuspecting prey. I tried to avoid meeting new people, to shield myself from the curse's malevolent influence, but it was no use. Everywhere I turned, there they were, the grinning faces, mocking me with their silent laughter. And then there were the dreams. Horrifying nightmares that seemed to bleed into reality, blurring the lines between waking and sleeping until I could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. In my dreams, I found myself wandering through a desolate landscape, surrounded by shadows that whispered secrets I could not comprehend. And there, in the darkness, I would see her, my sister, her face twisted into a wicked grin that mirrored those of the cursed souls who haunted my waking hours. I tried to reach out to her, to save her from the darkness that threatened to consume her, but she was always just out of reach, slipping through my fingers like smoke in the wind. And then, one fateful night, she appeared to me in the flesh, her eyes empty and lifeless, her lips curled into a mocking smile. She spoke to me in a voice that was not her own, promising me salvation if only I would surrender to the curse. But even as I stood there, paralyzed with fear, I knew that I could not give in. For I had seen the true face of the curse, and I knew that it was a darkness from which there could be no escape. And so I turned my back on my sister, on the curse that had haunted us for so long, and I fled into the night, hoping against all odds that I could outrun the darkness. With each passing day, I felt myself slipping further and further into the abyss, until I could no longer tell where the curse ended and I began. And then, one fateful night, I had a dream, or perhaps it was a nightmare, I can no longer say for certain. In the dream, I found myself standing at the edge of a vast abyss, the darkness stretching out before me like an endless sea. And there, at the center of it all, stood a figure cloaked in shadow, the embodiment of the curse that had haunted me for so long. It spoke to me in a voice of thousands tormented souls, promising to leave me alone if I were to end my life and jump into the abyss. At first, I resisted its temptations, clinging to the faint glimmer of hope that still burned within me. But as the darkness closed in around me, I knew that I could no longer fight against the inevitable. I had been marked by the curse, tainted by its malevolent influence, and there was no escaping its grasp. And so, with a heavy heart and a sense of resignation, I surrendered myself to the darkness, allowing it to consume me body and soul. As I jumped, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a peace that I had not known in years, perhaps even in my entire life. And as I descended, I knew that I was finally free from the curse that had haunted me for so long, free from the pain and suffering that had plagued my existence. For in the darkness, I had found my true purpose, my true destiny, to embrace and become one with them, to wield their power as my own and to reign over the world as its rightful ruler. And as I embraced them, I knew that I would never again be alone, for I was one with the curse, and they were one with me. And together, we would usher in a new era, a new age of terror and despair, where the grinning faces of the cursed would reign supreme for all eternity. Story 2. The Whispering Shadows. It all started with the whispers, faint, indistinct voices that seemed to echo from the darkest corners of my mind. At first, I dismissed them as nothing more than figments of my imagination, the result of an overactive imagination or too many late nights spent alone in my room. But as the days turned into weeks, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, until I could no longer ignore them. They spoke to me of things I could not understand, of events that had not yet come to pass, and of a darkness that threatened to consume me whole. I tried to tell my girlfriend about the voices, to explain to her the strange sensations that plagued my mind, but she only laughed and called me crazy. She said that I was imagining things, that there was no such thing as hearing into the future. But I knew the truth. The voices were real, and they were trying to tell me something. They warned me of danger, of a threat that lurked just beyond the edges of my reality, waiting to pounce when I least expected it. And then, one fateful night, I had a vision of my girlfriend standing over me, a look of madness in her eyes as she raised a knife high above her head. The voices screamed at me to run, to get as far away from her as possible, but it was too late. She was already upon me, her blade descending with deadly precision. I woke up screaming, my heart pounding in my chest, and I knew that I had to trust the voices. They spoke of darkness and death, of betrayal and despair. As I struggled to make sense of them, I began to notice a pattern. They always seemed to focus on my girlfriend, as if she were somehow connected to the darkness. At first, I tried to dismiss the idea as absurd. After all, my girlfriend had been by my side for 5 years, supporting me through thick and thin. But the more I listened to the voices, the more convinced I became that she was hiding something from me, something dark and sinister that threatened to tear us apart. I confronted her about my suspicions, but she only laughed and brushed them off as nonsense. She said that I was letting my imagination run wild, that there was no truth to the voices that tormented me day and night. But deep down, I knew that she was lying. I could see it in the way she avoided my gaze, in the way she hesitated before answering my questions. And as the whispers grew louder, their warnings more dire, I knew that I had to uncover the truth before it was too late. So I began to dig, scouring the internet for clues, searching for any sign of the darkness that lurked within my girlfriend's past. And what I found chilled me to the bone, a string of unsolved murders, each one bearing a striking resemblance to the visions that haunted my nightmares. I confronted my girlfriend with my findings, but she only laughed and said that I was grasping at straws. But I could see the fear in her eyes, the guilt that lurked just beneath the surface of her facade. And then, one fateful night, I had another vision, a vision of my girlfriend standing over me, her hands stained with blood, a look of madness in her eyes. And this time, I knew that it was not just a dream, it was a warning, a glimpse into the craziness that lay hidden within her soul. As the truth dawned on me, I knew that I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with what she had done, couldn't let her escape the consequences of her actions. And so, with a heavy heart and a sense of dread, I made a decision that would change my life forever and plunge me into a skirmish from which there would be no escape. With a heavy heart and a sense of foreboding, I confronted her one last time, determined to uncover the truth once and for all. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw something that chilled me to the bone, a cold, calculating stare. I knew then that I was in grave danger, that my girlfriend was not the loving partner I had once believed her to be. She was a predator, a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I was nothing more than prey to be hunted and consumed at her leisure. But even as fear threatened to consume me, I refused to back down. I had come too far to turn back now, too close to the truth to let it slip through my fingers. And so, with a courage born of desperation, I confronted her with the evidence of her crimes, laying bare the darkness that had consumed her soul. At first, she denied everything, claiming innocence in the face of overwhelming evidence. But as I pressed her further, her facade began to crumble, revealing the true depths of her depravity. And then, with a cold, merciless smile, she confessed to everything, the murders, the lies, the betrayal. She reveled in her power, in the fear that she had instilled in me, knowing that she held all the cards and that I was powerless to stop her. But even as she gloated over her victory, I knew that she wouldn't let me unpunished. I had seen too much, endured too much, to simply walk away free. I attacked her, with my life on the line. But she was ready for me, her eyes alight with malice as she met my attack head-on. And as we grappled with each other, I knew that only one of us would emerge victorious. The police arrived after the neighbors heard our screaming and barely managed to save my throat from the blade she had hidden in her sleeve. I am just glad to be alive to write this and grateful for the nightmares and voices. I'm sure she will hate her white soundproof jail cell in which she will spend the end of her life. The end. Subscribe for more. Thank you.